Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Scruffy Movies podcast. I'm Zach Wallace.
And I'm John Crocker.
And today, if you are anywhere within the movie or comic book community, this week was a big week for a certain favorite comic book character. So Crocker and I thought we'd kind of take a look back at the movies that the character has appeared in before, as well as kind of speculate on what to expect of the new character, the new iteration of the character, and that would be Batman. Specifically, Robert Pattinson was just cast as Batman.
Everyone's favorite sparkly vampire.
He's been in other stuff other than Twilight.
Like what? That anybody cares about?
Remember Me? That movie, that romantic drama movie where it turns out it was 9/11 the whole time?
I definitely did not see that one. Is for real? It turns out it was 9/11 the whole time.
Yeah, it turns out it's a story about him like falling in love with somebody, and then the twist of the movie is that you find out it's September 11th and he happens to be in like the Twin Towers when one of the planes is coming to hit.
Jeez. Well,
the twist ending.
Let's just dive right into it. What do you think? What do you think about the choice and the casting?
I'm willing to give him his fair shot. I mean, like, literally when everybody, like when Michael Keaton was cast, people were like, oh, terrible choice, disgusting. When Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker, people were like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And then even when Ben Affleck was cast as Batman, and I know some people don't like Batfleck, but I really do, but even then people were like, ugh, disgusting, I hate it. Go away. But I mean, I like Ben Affleck as Batman, but I mean, I've learned my lesson from being just like out of the gate, like, ugh, oh God, how could they? How dare they? And so now I've learned to like kind of give it its fair shot because people have proven themselves more than once to be worthy of what they were cast as, even though it seems like it might have been a weird decision at the time.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And I think this could be one of those good examples of someone who gave it enough time in between the last role that they were sort of pigeonholed in and the new one. I mean, I think he could do a great job. I'm going to hold out judgment until I see it. I definitely don't want to just throw off on it and throw it away out of the gate just because of his past movies, which were, let I remind everyone, a huge success, even though it seems weird that that would be the choice.
Yeah, that's why it seems weird, but I've seen a couple of like fan edits and stuff, and he looks good in the suit that the people I've seen him like have put him in, and he definitely looks like a Bruce Wayne type guy. He seems like a younger Bruce Wayne, so I'm very curious as to like how he's gonna play it because the Batman, which is the movie he's starring in that Matt Reeves is making, was originally gonna star Ben Affleck and be part of the DC EU. But now it seems like maybe it's rebooting the Batman character or doing something different with it. I'm not entirely sure.
So a couple of things there. So we don't know if this is going to be 100% in the DCEU. I figured it was just part of that slow, soft reboot you and I have been talking about.
I think it might be. That's why I said I was so curious about it because I'm not actually sure if it's going to be or not.
And then you mentioned like a younger Batman. That is a curious fact because I did not consider that. But most of the Batmans we've seen recently, at least, were sort of like middle-aged Batman, not necessarily like young buck Batman.
Yeah, and I mean, even just specifically, Ben Affleck has pretty much been the oldest Batman that we've gotten. And so having that person who nobody knows if it's like in the same universe or not with this Batman seems, I don't know, it seems strange. I'm not sure the direction they're going with it.
Yeah, I would be excited to see them make a firm statement and say for sure whether it's in the DCEU or whether it's not, because I know that what they want to do is see if it's successful. And if it is, be like, oh, yeah, it's been in the DCU the whole time. What are you talking about? And if it's not, just be like, oh, it was an experiment. It failed. You can't, don't hurt the rest of the greater franchise over it. But I would like for them to make that distinction, especially because I was a little confused about it. I'm glad you brought it up. And I would wager there's a lot of people out there that just don't know for sure because they haven't said one way or the other.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of how it's going to be until they make a definitive statement. I think they're still kind of early on in the whole process because Robert Pattinson was only just announced last week. So it seems like they're not too far along, I guess, in the movie making process of it all. So I'm assuming that probably sooner rather than later, we will get that kind of announcement that's like, it's either in the DCEU or it's not. It's either Ben Affleck's Batman, but like 20 years ago, or it's not. I'm sure we'll get something.
Are these like leaks or press conferences? Because I feel like there's a lot of movies that are made where like it's a big announcement who's going to be in the movie beforehand. And then there's a lot of movies that are made where it's like, oh man, did you know that this character was going to play that role? Like, where in the process do they decide whether they're going to try and keep it hush hush or whether they're just going to say it the moment they give them a contract?
I think it honestly depends on how big the person is that's in the movie. And because Robert Pattinson's a pretty big actor to a lot of people, I'm sure like as soon as the ink was dry, they had it like already typed up and they just pressed enter on the press release about it.
Yeah, you're probably right. It probably does actually drum up more interest. And at least now everyone knows for sure there's another Batman movie. It'll be no surprise when he's in it, which I guess could also be a good thing if it's even slightly controversial. Just
Right.
get it out in the open.
Right. And now, I mean, even it's clearly drummed up interest. We're doing a whole podcast.
This is true. This is true. But we also get to talk about all of the other awesome Batmans.
True.
So, do you have the skills that you typically are able to whip out at any point in time in regards to Batman and just be able to like rattle off all the past Batman movies?
Yeah, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, and that's the end of the one franchise. And then the next franchise was Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. And then we saw Batman versus Superman, and Batman made a cameo in Suicide Squad, and then he was in Justice League.
Impressive. Very impressive, sir.
I know you're always impressed by like me just being able to rattle that stuff off the top of my head. The other day at work, somebody was asking me a question of like who an actress was, and I said her name, and you were like, off the top of your head.
Well, it was like stupidly obscure. Like it was just one of those random like digging for that nugget, and you just had it readily available. It wasn't like asking Batman.
Yeah.
I forget what it was.
It was Annabelle Wallace.
From what in what?
Kyle was asking me who the girl was in the Tom Cruise Mummy movie. And
Yes.
I said Annabelle Wallace. And he said, what else would I know her from? And I said, Annabelle and the Brothers Grimsby. And you were just like, off the top of your head.
It makes no sense. It is a superpower. You are a superhero, sir.
I don't think so.
So what out of those three franchises? Gosh, I mean, you can't really. Well, I guess I could probably pick a favorite. I could pick my favorite to watch, and I could pick my favorite franchise out of those three.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to an argument we've had before, which is which one is the best movie? Like, what is the better movie? Which is easily the Dark Knight franchise. But what's the most entertaining? And that's the 4 original Batman movies.
Yeah, totally. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we mentioned so much on this podcast that we were like prime demographic for a lot of the original Batman movies. So
Right.
When we were watching them, the campiness and the hokiness and all of that, the bright colors and the whop bam boom, like that was all a part of why we loved it instead of a part of why some people did not love it, you know. But it was made for our age group at the time, and because it stuck around and made such an impact, they will just always hold a special place.
Yeah, I remember even too, the first Batman movie that I like remember seeing is Batman Forever. And we had it like recorded from HBO. And I thought that was like the only Batman movie. And then when Batman and Robin was coming out, I was like, cool, they're making a sequel to it. And I think it was my brother was like, well, we could watch the other Batman movies. And I was like, what? Excuse me? Like, I didn't even know that the Michael Keaton Batman movies existed for a while.
Yeah, I like Michael Keaton Batman, and I like the Val Kilmer Batman too. I like them both. The Batman and Robin is probably the one out of all 4 that like more people hate than all of them because it's just so weird, but it's the one I probably watched the most, and maybe because it was the newest at the time, like when they kind of stopped making them for a while. But I loved Batman and Robin, and when they just sort of decided to ditch Robin from there on out with the rest of the franchises, which might again have to do with the whole like middle age sort of Batman on his own thing. I don't know, but it bummed me out that and it still bums me out that we haven't seen like a good Robin. And keep in mind during all of this, during that entire time period, there was always like the animated TV shows, and we had even a few animated movies that came out back then, and most of them were Batman and Robin. So it was like we were still getting our Robin hit, but just not in the live action.
Yeah, and they've always teased him in the other franchises. If you'll remember in The Dark Knight Rises, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character, the detective character he played in that movie, at the very end, the woman's like, "You should use your real name, Robin," which makes no sense for Robin in general. They just put it in there to be like, "Oh, this guy's Robin." But they've also teased it in the DCEU with Batman looking at Jason's Todd Robin outfit in a plexiglass case after the Joker has assumedly beaten killed him. And it says "Joke's on you" or something similar to that. So they've always teased Robin, but we've never like seen him again. The older Batman movies were the only times that we actually like got story with Robin in it.
Yeah, and there are a few different Robin stories for them to draw from. I mean, like you mentioned, the Jason Todd, and then I mean, I like the stereotypical like ran away, join the circus Robin myself. So that's what I want to see.
Dick Grayson.
Yes. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name.
Probably the most famous.
Have you ever went back and watched any of like the 1960s Batman and Robins?
No, I never have. I remember watching Batman the movie like once on cable and being like, not for me, because by that point Batman had become not campy. So to see him become campy was, it's almost like, it's like when you watch the remake instead of the original. When you watch the original, you're like, "Oh my gosh, this movie's so boring, it's so slow." But that's only because the remake had to kick it up like 20 notches so that it was something different and more fun than what the original was. But I feel like it's kind of like that. Like I almost saw the remake before the original, and so when I went back to watch the original, I couldn't watch it with like rose tinted glasses because I'd seen what comes next, and I like that a lot more.
Yeah, I remember watching it a long time ago when I was really young, and really the only thing I remember other than some of the classic, sort of moments out of it were just the fact that it had like all the villains, like every single villain was in that movie, and they all kind of had their place and played their role, and I always thought that was awesome, which is always something, especially when I was a kid. I didn't understand. Like I would go and watch other movies and it'd be like one big bad guy, and I was like, but there's 15 of them in this universe. Like, why aren't we seeing those? Like, just thought does not even cross your mind when you're that young that, oh, they'll make another movie with another villain, or they could use this, and stretch it out over 10 years, or it makes a better story. I was just like, you got them, throw them out there. And I loved it that in the OG Batman, they were all present.
Yeah, I mean, really, Batman, just the original one with Michael Keaton, is the only one that really doesn't have more than one villain. Because Batman Returns has Catwoman and the Penguin, Forever has Riddler and Two-Face, and then Batman and Robin has Poison Ivy, Bane, and Mr. Freeze. So that's the first Batman is the only one without like multiple bad guys in that original film.
The Jack Nicholson one?
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, which, I mean, up until Heath Ledger, that was probably my favorite Joker.
He's about the only Joker, him and the guy in the TV show.
Yeah, Mark Hamill.
Oh, that's true, yeah. The voiceover.
Yeah, which Batman's a slippery slope. Batman's like one of the few franchises out there where people take the animated series and the video games like being part of the canon like super serious. Like people take it real serious in the Star Wars world when you're talking about Clone Wars and you're talking about video games, and in the Marvel world people take it really serious. But Batman is like, people are hardcore. They pull the animated stuff right in there and act like it's part of the main canon. Same with the video games, more so than probably any other franchise, I would say.
Well, yeah, and Batman's a very interesting character to me because of that. Because I've said this to my friends a few times before. I really like Batman, and I'll always support Batman and Batman like media. He's basically the first superhero that a lot of people are introduced to that they like, because every child has the base fear of, oh my gosh, what if my parents die? But then this guy took it and turned it into something different. So it's kind of like overcoming that fear, and I think that speaks to children a lot. And but because of that, Batman is almost lauded as this like superhuman type person, which I mean he can be if he has prep time, because he's also the world's greatest detective. But like just rolling up to Superman and being able to take him down like no problem, it's just not possible. And it's not to say I don't like Batman, but I love Superman. But it's not to say I don't dislike either character. It's just saying like his pop culture status has been blown so out of proportion that people are making him in their own fan fictions take on like Galactus by himself and come out of it unscathed. And it's like, he is just a dude. He couldn't do that.
Yeah. And I think that's one reason why we all fell in love with Batman too, is because not only was it like the fear, that's ingrained in everyone, but he had a lot of money and he was just a dude. So it was like he achieved what everyone else could theoretically achieve. If everyone as a child looking at comics or TV or whatever it was, video games, you think to yourself, I could just go make a bunch of money, then I know I'm that smart. So I'm just a regular dude. I could go do that. There's a little bit of the everyman, it's like that he's the end of one particular path in life that anyone could take if they so choose, so selected to, which is totally different than a lot of other superheroes out there. And I think it's one reason why we are more forgiving with there being more actors, more stories closer to one another as far as when they release, because it's not like this one particular individual that got this, one power imbued upon them. It kind of makes sense to come at that story from a lot of different angles and it still all be Batman.
Yeah, and I think too, like what you said, that does apply to kids, because back when you're watching this stuff, the world is your oyster. So if I'm watching Batman and I'm like, whoa, all I need to do is get rich, dude, no problem. Like,
yeah, done.
Yeah.
Planning on doing that anyway.
Yeah. And so what's interesting now is like probably with the onset of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and stuff, instead of like our generation saying that when the Batman movies were coming out, like, oh, I want to be Batman, probably a lot of kids are saying, oh, I want to be Iron Man.
Yeah, totally. And I think the story is very similar to that we see of Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Like,
tragic event leads to like the birth of a superhero.
yeah, and it's like every Spider-Man story tells the same, tells that same bit.
Yeah.
Every Batman story, same thing. You got to get the parents die or some, version of that presented to you somehow.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that's one reason why Spider-Man has always been Marvel's flagship character and Batman's always been DC's. Which, I guess Superman's in there too, but Batman's been pretty darn on par for the history of.
I think that they're the most relatable, like what we've been saying before. I feel like everybody can relate to Batman because everybody has like crappy days and bad things happen to them, and Batman just happens to be a guy who's taken all of his crappy days and turned it into something worthwhile to be able to like help fight evil and stuff. And he's also just a single guy going up against super powered villains. Like all of his villains have some sort of superpower, and he's just a regular guy who's just super smart and is doing this because he feels like he needs to. So I think everybody can kind of relate to that, and I think that's part of what's made him such a popular character.
Who's your favorite villains?
Well, my favorite Batman villain of all time is the Riddler. And that's only for the reason that literally every other villain is out to they want to rob banks. They want to get rich. Joker wants to see the world burn. People want to fight Batman. Like people want all of these different things. I like the Riddler so much because he's like, I could give two shits about Batman. I want to fight the world's greatest detective. I want to match wits with the smartest man in the world and see if he can defeat me. And the only way he knows how to do that is to be a supervillain because that's what Batman fights. And I don't know. I like that characterization of just like, he doesn't care that he's Batman. He only wants to fight basically his mind, but he just has to be a villain to do that.
That's Enigma, right?
Yeah, Edward Nygma.
Yeah. I would say my favorite and one I would love to see a lot more of is Two-Face. Just always loved Two-Face.
I have too.
He's more of a let fate decide type of a character, and I've always kind of dug that, and I've always dug just the character in general and how he's portrayed. But I think that if I had to pick one villain's if I had to be a villain, I would probably pick Mr. Freeze, just because he probably has the coolest toys and he can do super cool things. A lot of the Batman villains are really kind of bland, honestly. They're not super bland, but they definitely aren't crazy super villains. They're more like crazy masterminds that are also villainous.
Yeah, that's kind of goes in with the Riddler a lot with Mr. Freeze, is he's not doing anything bad to be doing bad things. He's doing it so that he can save his wife. He's not out there just being like, oh, I'm a villain and I'm going to take over the world. He's like, I need this to help my wife. It's like the Sandman in Spider-Man, at least in the version that we've seen portrayed in the movies in Spider-Man 3. Flip Marco's not a bad dude. He just wants to help his daughter. But the only way he knows to do that is to rob banks.
Yep. This is true. There's a lot of good villains, a lot of classic villains, and probably one of the few franchises where, at least with what I've seen, the villains tend to stick around Batman. If you're a Batman villain, you kind of hang around Batman. You don't whore your way across the rest of the DC,
Yeah, and the only person I know of that's really done that is the Joker, and the only reason he's done that is because he's taken on the whole of the Justice League at once, because his plans are just bigger than what Batman can handle by himself sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you'll get a lot, probably more of that as these movies come out, like Suicide Squad and the newer media coming along can draw on some of these more popular characters. But at least historically, they've always kind of stuck around, which it may just be a DC thing versus Marvel anyway. Maybe Marvel's the one where they sort of just intermingle across the universe.
Yeah. And there's I like that you brought that up, because there's a lot of Batman villains, but I feel like we know the top 5 or the top 6, that's who we always see, because those are just his biggest ones. So I like that Suicide Squad and Gotham, when it was on, and all these video games and these movies and stuff are coming out, because now we get the chance to explore more than just those 6. For instance, one of the weirdest villains that I know his name is Polka Dot Man, and he wears a suit of polka dots that he can rip off and use to kill people at any time he wants. He's going to be a main calendar in the Suicide Squad with James Gunn.
Well,
and I cannot wait for that, because there's Calendar Man who literally only does like criminal things surrounded by like calendars and dates on a calendar and like specific times and stuff. There's Ragman, who just wears like killer rags, who actually was a good guy in the Arrow TV series for like one season and then he left. So there's like a million different Batman villains and characters, and I'm glad that we're able to explore that more now with all the different media we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, the only ones I can think of that we haven't mentioned are like, I think Scarecrow is a big one.
Yeah, and even then, he kind of got his day in Batman Begins, and then he kept popping up. He came back in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises.
You know, yeah, I think the biggest probably discrepancy in what we've seen on screen, just talking about those movies, was Poison Ivy's Bane, and then like Bane from the last of the Dark Knight series.
Yeah, which both of those aren't even the Bane I like. The Bane I like is just this super jacked Mexican luchador.
There's also Luchador Bane.
Yeah, that's my favorite iteration. So I hope that we get a Luchador Bane someday soon. People were pitching, since James Gunn took over Suicide Squad, people were pitching Dave Bautista as Bane, as Mexican Luchador Bane, and that would have been awesome.
Yes, it would. And it would put Dave Bautista in both universes. So I would be all about that.
Yes.
So once Luchador Bane, was that the Bane in the animated series from when we were kids?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's also the Bane from like the Arkham games and the Injustice games. He's like Luchador Bane.
God, I remember watching the Batman animated movie from those shows when we were younger, like the 90s Batmans.
Mask of the Phantasm.
The Phantasm. I was about to say, I remember like the purple cloak guy with the sharp little knife things or claws or whatever they were. But I really that's all I can muster. I really can't remember anything else about those movies, that show. I mean, I remember bits and bobs, but that movie in particular, I just remember the bad guy, what he looks like.
Yeah, and that movie was like the best reviewed Batman movie of all time, I think, until the Dark Knight series started to come out.
That's crazy. It was better than the Val Kilmer and Keaton Batmans, review-wise.
Oh, especially Kilmer Batman. That's where people said that series started to decline, was Kilmer.
I know. Everybody said that, but I didn't mind it.
No, I love that movie. And it has a special place in my heart because, like I said, that's like the first Batman movie that I remember. But like my brother had all the toys and stuff, which meant by association I had all the toys because when he wasn't playing with them, they were mine. So I remember I had like a Riddler toy where you could hook him up to a helicopter that was shaped, or he had like a jetpack helicopter thing that was shaped like a question mark. And when you pressed a button on his back, it like swirled around like a helicopter. And I play with that thing all the time. Like I love that more than anything else. And so I think that's colored my opinion. But Batman Forever is like almost one of the pinnacle Batman movies to me. It's like the perfect amount of Batman brooding and story, but then also like the perfect amount of campiness and stuff. Like Tommy Lee Jones wearing a bright purple zebra outfit on one side of his body while he wears like a business suit on the other.
Love it.
It's like the perfect amount. And also Jim Carrey was a great Riddler. I know people have problems with his Riddler, but he was great.
Which one just had was it just Batman, the first one in the series? That was the one with Jack Nicholson, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the first movie ever that I watched with actual surround sound. And I remember when the Batmobile would drive by and you could hear it go from left to right. It was like the coolest thing ever. It was some crazy VHS technology at the time.
Wow, yeah, that's pretty cool. I remember seeing that one had like come on TV, and the Joker scared me because Batman Forever was made definitely like more for kids. It was a lot less dark than the
Tim Burton-iest.
Yeah, and then the Tim Burton Batmans. But I don't know, that one scared me. I remember seeing the Joker like jumping around on screen, and I was like, I was also scared of clowns though because of Pennywise.
Yeah, see, I didn't get around to Pennywise till later.
No, Pennywise was
at least, it was at least like presented as a superhero, possibly okay for kids movie, but there's no way at that point my parents would have let me watch it.
Yeah.
We were talking about this the other day.
Yeah, we were. But I mean, I and then the fact that he's just continued, and we've gotten like all these different iterations and stuff of him, like you said, they're kind of approaching it from all different angles. First, we got the campy Batman with like Adam West, and then we got like slightly more serious, but like campy things were still happening around him with the Tim Burton franchise, the 80s and 90s franchise. Then we got like really like super grounded reality tactical Batman with Christian Bale and stuff. So it's interesting that they're going all these different ways, and it also makes me think of like how Robert Pattinson's going to fit in.
Woo-hoo. What's that sound mean?
That means it's halftime.
Woo-hoo.
So if you've never listened to the show before, halftime is the part of the show where Crocker and I talk about recent movie news, movies we've seen, things we're excited about. It's also been where we're giving away our digital copies for free. And that's going to continue this week with the thing Batman wants the most, and that's going to be the Death of Superman. So if you want to enter to win the Death of Superman free digital copy, really good DC animated movie that just came out, either enter the code word Smallville below on the YouTube video you're watching right now, or direct message me at Scruffy Movies on Instagram. Again, the code word is Smallville, and you'll be entered to win a free digital copy of The Death of Superman.
I say this a lot, but I got to catch up with the animated stuff.
I only just caught up because my in-laws for Christmas got me all of them. And so I only just caught up with everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Who's kicking off halftime this week?
Go for it.
Okay. So not a whole heck of a lot, but I'm pumped that we got the Black Mirror trailer. Have you seen that?
I have.
We're going to have 3 episodes this season from what it looks like. Mm-hmm. So I think what they've done is they basically just went all in on making 3 kind of semi-star-studded, and even better than if they had to spread that wealth around. At least that's what I'm hoping. And some big news is we've got Miley in one of them, and Falcon in another.
Yeah. And Eric Foreman's in another one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Didn't notice that. So pretty pumped about that. We've talked about Black Mirror before. I love it. It's a great show. Definitely not for everyone. And if you watch more than 3 episodes back to back, you'll feel like you need a shower.
Yeah. If you can get through season 1, episode 1, then the show's for you. If you can't muster that, don't watch the rest, because that is really the test of if you can handle Black Mirror or not.
It really is. And for some reason on my Netflix, and I just assume that this is a Netflix thing, they count backwards. If you were to start traditionally, you would start with the newest one and work to the oldest, which is kind of cool because you can do that with this TV show. But I, just being as anal as I am, scrolled all the way down to the oldest season, then all the way down to the oldest episode and started there, and was like, oh, maybe this is why they want you to start at the top.
Well, it wasn't a Netflix show until season 4, I think, maybe season 3, but it wasn't a Netflix show until then. And then that's when Netflix picked it up, and it became super big and huge. It already had kind of a cult following, but when Netflix picked it up, it became huge. So they might just be start with the Netflix stuff. Trust us.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I also saw keeping it on topic, the Batwoman trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Looks pretty good. It's basically the lesbian cousin of Bruce Wayne somehow busts past Black Alfred and takes all the Batman stuff and becomes an awesome Batwoman superhero. But I mean, it looks like it's going to be action packed, and if it's like the rest of the DC shows, which I'm assuming it flows right into that sort of universe, then it's probably going to be okay.
Okay, 2 issues. Number 1, how dare you call Kate Kane lesbian Batman?
Well, she's definitely lesbian Batwoman.
And number 2, that was not Black Alfred. That is Luke Fox, Lucius Fox's son, and I only know that because I read the plot synopsis.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense then.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And then that makes me even happier because Lucius Fox is one of my favorite characters in all of Batman. So
it looks like we're going to be not only exploring Batman's family and legacy a little bit more, but also Lucius Fox's surrounding characters of Batman's legacy a little bit more.
Yeah, so it looks like it's a good time. She wears a Ramones shirt, so it's got to be okay.
Yeah.
And then this is one that I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm definitely going to watch it. It's called The Mountain. Have you seen that trailer with Jeff Goldblum?
I don't think so.
It is a surreal, ultra cerebral movie period piece set in what appears to be the 50s, maybe really early 50s. He's a photographer, and he hires a really slow, shy kid to follow him around as he takes pictures of people in like insane asylums, and it just looks super, super trippy, like 100% like film festival worthy. But it's Jeff Goldblum, and it's just like the perfect character for him by the way it looks. So I'm really kind of excited to see just how off the rails it is.
That does sound interesting.
Yeah. And that's really all I got this week.
All right, not a lot for me this week as well. We got a new trailer for a movie I'm really excited about called Midsummer. It's by Ari Aster, who also made the incredible Hereditary. So just by making Hereditary, he's kind of got me on his list. I know we've talked about it before, but directors who they can do anything and I'll go check it out. So far with Hereditary, he's already made me want to see Midsummer because Hereditary was so amazing. So he knows what he's doing, and I'm extremely excited about that. Trailer was really weird and freaky, and I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but it looks really good. Some movie news that I was really excited about. There is a movie that just got greenlit. It's now in production. It's called Free Guy. And it stars Ryan Reynolds, Steve Harrington from Stranger Things, and Taika Waititi. And it's going to be directed by Sean Levy, who directed all the Night at the Museum movies and was instrumental in getting like Stranger Things off the ground. Produced by Greg Berlanti, who makes Riverdale and Arrow and all the CW shows. And it's going to be about Ryan Reynolds he's a bank teller, and then one day he realizes that he is a bank teller in a free roam video game, and he's no longer going to live that life anymore.
What?
Yeah. And so he's like an NPC character that wakes up basically and goes like, I don't know, crazy or what. Like, I don't know any plot besides that basic one point, but I'm already in by like the cast and the director and all that stuff.
That sounded very straightforward until your last sentence, and then you just like calmly threw the biggest curveball ever. By the way, he's an NPC in an open world video game, and he wakes up.
That's what it's about.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, it sounds really good. I'm very excited about it. And then also, I kind of wanted to do something for halftime because now it's starting to be summer blockbuster season. And I know we always say this is for like movie news and all that stuff. And we say more than just movie news, but we normally only ever talk about movie news. So I'm going to take my last little bit of halftime each week and start to talk about some summer blockbusters that I've been seeing. So first up, I went and saw John Wick Chapter 3 today. And I got to say, kind of let me down.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, like I know that action is like what makes that franchise shine and stuff, but in this one, I mean, it got to be like too much at certain points. Like there was fight scenes that went on for 10 minutes. And like after the 5-minute mark, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I got it. Like, let's move on. They just kept doing the same thing over and over and over again that we'd already seen. And so I'm not going to say any spoilers. I don't want to ruin it for anybody that might want to see it. I enjoyed the story. The story was very interesting, but overall, just not what I was really expecting. They kind of overkilled it on the action for me, and the parts that weren't action were a little bit cheesy at times. So it just wasn't what I was expecting. I expected more from it, I guess, and it let me down a little bit.
That surprises me.
Yeah. And so that was my little review for this week. Keeping with a Rotten Tomatoes score, I'd probably give it like a 65%. So still fresh, still enjoyed it, but not as high up as it currently has on Rotten Tomatoes. And next week, I will hopefully be able to talk about Brightburn and maybe also Aladdin, because they both come out next week, and I plan on seeing both of those. So look forward to that review next.
Yeah, I definitely want to go see Aladdin.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, I'm just not as pumped to go see John Wick 3 as I was before. Like, you know,
I know, and I knew I would like ruin it for some people, but honestly, I came out of the movie theater saying, like, talking to my wife and saying, kind of wish I would have waited for DVD on that one.
Ooh, that's the kiss of death from Zach Wallace.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to pick up sort of where you left off with Batman.
Okay.
So you were talking about like Batmans throughout the years and sort of the differences in them. And I think that is probably the defining characteristic that makes Batman different from all of the other superhero franchises we see today, from Marvel to other DC and everything. And that is it's the exact same thing that Bond has going for it. Like, there's always a Batman for every generation that has their own story, and some are better than others, and some pick favorites, and some always love their childhood ones the most. But every generation has a Batman, and none of the movies are really that terrible. You know what I mean? So it's like there's always going to be one. And I feel like with Batman, they can pass the torch so much easier than they can with other heroes that may only have a movie or two under their belt, if that.
Yeah, and Batman has been a really good character for that kind of campiness and stuff like I was talking about before. Either the movies are actually really good or they're campy and entertaining to watch. Like, I can understand that Batman and Robin is not a good movie, but man, is it an entertaining hour and a half. Like, it is fun to watch and see like Mr. Freeze do all his like ice puns and stuff. Like, it is a very entertaining movie. The closest it's ever gotten for me to being like not as entertaining, I guess, would be Batman versus Superman. And I've still seen that like 4 or 5 times now. So, I mean, there's always going to be a Batman. And kind of like what they're doing now, people were like, we don't like Ben Affleck. And they're like, okay, no problem. New Batman. Like, we're in a society now. And I think kind of Spider-Man was almost a guinea pig for this, where they stopped the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man because it was almost unheard of when Andrew Garfield Spider-Man was coming out in 2012. It was like, man, I mean, the last Spider-Man movie just came out in 2007 with Spider-Man 3. That's 5 years, and they're making a new Spider-Man. I was like, that's too soon. That's too soon. But then they did it again, and in shorter succession, I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out in 2013 or 14. I think 14, if I'm not mistaken. And then Captain America Civil War was 2016. So that was only 2 years before another new Spider-Man. So it's happening like in shorter and shorter succession now, the rebooting of characters and of these franchises, that now, especially, I think your point rings true. There's always going to be a Batman. There's always going to be a Superman. There's always going to be whoever, because these characters are timeless. And now that Hollywood has seen that audiences are willing to buy into other people playing these characters in like the next year, especially if, I mean, God, if Joaquin Phoenix Joker does good, then we can have those like one-offs and offshoots of stuff that doesn't have to tie into any main storylines. Like, let's just make movies because they seem like they'll be interesting movies to make, which is kind of the direction the animated movies are in now. But there's always going to be these characters around because there's always going to be people wanting to play them, and there's always going to be interested audiences wanting to go see stories about them.
Yeah, and I think time isn't worth as much as it used to be. Like back in the Tobey Maguire days, that was still when a movie came out and you got it on DVD, you watched it a lot over the next like 3 years. That really just doesn't happen anymore. You know what I mean? So the more time,
nobody buys DVDs anymore.
Yeah, nobody at all.
Especially not me. I hate them. Stupid.
Well, you're the exception to the rule, and even you have so many, you can't like show love to your favorite 5 that you've bought over the past 12 months. You know, that just doesn't happen like it used to.
Yeah, very true. A lot of times I will see a movie in theaters and know like that I need it for my collection. I'm trying to think of one, like the most recent Predator movie. I bought it because it was on sale and I really enjoyed it, but I haven't watched it since I bought it. I saw it in theaters, really liked it, knew I needed it for my Predator collection, purchased it, but I haven't watched it again yet.
Yep. I would say that's probably the way most people buy DVDs now.
Yeah.
You know, so it makes sense that, and especially with the world we live in with binging TV shows and all of that, people would be more receptive to switching things up after even just a couple of years. And I think you're right. Spider-Man was totally the first one we saw that with, but Batman just, I don't know. I just feel like Batman sort of just has that has that mastered.
Yeah, and I mean they're so of the Spider-Mans we've seen Peter Parker, nerdy high school Peter Parker bitten by a spider. That's it. And Batman is always Bruce Wayne, but he is like we were talking about before halftime, tactical Bruce Wayne with Christian Bale, or campy Bruce Wayne with Batman Forever, Batman and Robin, Adam West Batman, or he's like old, grim, terrible outlook on the world Batman with Ben Affleck. So he has these different aspects of character that go into the different movies where everybody's like, okay, Bruce Wayne, Batman, but they can tell different Batman stories.
Yeah, and I think the latest ones got lucky in the fact that even though they may not have been the best in the world, because they were in the greater DCU umbrella and the universe that was happening, they still had their place in the world carved out for them. You know, so it's like even if they weren't like super great and maybe they would not have just stood up to the test of time all on their own, there's still always going to be a place for them. And especially the more and more the DCEU grows and the better and better the movies get, even if they totally replace the characters, those movies will always have a place just because they're in that universe.
Right. And like we've talked about before, if they and now it's kind of all up in the air because Ezra Miller, who played the Flash in Justice League and a very small cameo in Batman vs Superman, has now quit his Flash role, so I'm not sure the direction that they're going to take it. But man, if they could have just got a Flashpoint movie up and running, they could have done whatever they wanted, but it seems like now they're not going to, and I'm not sure like what they're going to do. Like Shazam was still in the DCEU, and like Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be, people loved Aquaman, so I'm sure that's still going to have Jason Momoa and set in this universe. But like everybody else is kind of, I don't know so much. So I honestly, I just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's news to me that Flashpoint took a dive if something's happened since the last time we talked about it, because we had chatted about maybe them combining like the next Flash movie or a Flash movie with 1984 and somehow making it into a Flashpoint, because you are already talking about a different point in time. So that just sounds like it's sort of going down the tubes.
Yeah, they couldn't keep a director on that movie to save their lives. So I don't know if there was like challenges in making a Flashpoint movie, or if Warner Brothers or DC themselves were being too pushy on like the story or whatever. But that movie went through like, I gotta say, like 7 or 8 directors were attached to that movie at one point or another, and they have all quit. Like off the top of my head, I know Robert Zemeckis was attached at one point, or he was like rumored to be attached. He was on like a short list of people they wanted to be attached. I know for sure, and I'm very sad we didn't get to see this iteration, Phil Lord and Chris Miller were attached at one point. And I think Rick Fumiyawa, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, was attached at one point. He made the most recent Magnificent Seven movie, and like all of them quit for different reasons and quit. And now Ezra Miller's contract has run out of time. Basically, I don't know the details of the contract, but I'm assuming it's like if like you have 5 movies on your contract, but if you go so long without being in a movie, they can't like logistically keep you on the waiting list until they're just ready to go. So I guess just the time ran out and they just couldn't get a movie up and running in time. And so he's quit. And now, I mean, if they had the same Flash, they could have done whatever they wanted. And now with Robert Pattinson Batman, would have been super easy to Flashpoint him out, Flashpoint Ben Affleck out, Flashpoint Robert Pattinson in. But I don't know what's going to happen now.
Yeah, I wonder if they've got all these directors into the room there, where they set them down with all the higher ups and say, okay, the entire weight of the DC universe is on your shoulders. With the Flashpoint movie, you can control everything and turn this ship around. And everybody's just been like, do not put that demon on me. I do not want that.
I mean, honestly, probably you're not far off. They probably did set them down and they were like, okay, Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill are out, so we're going to need to recast those people, introduce them in your Flashpoint movie. But also, we want to keep Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa in, so we're going to do that. And they were like, okay, no problem. And then they just kept coming back with like, oh, this person's not going to do it anymore. And they kept coming back and being like, oh, we're not making this movie anymore. So you got to take that character out of your movie and save it for a different movie. And they were probably at the end of the day like, I can't do this anymore. And they just left.
And then multiply that times like all 12 people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, do you have a quick pitch for this week?
I mean, I guess we can quick pitch Robert Pattinson, but I mean, really, I think that the movie we're going to get is going to be much more in tone and in line with the tactical Christian Bale Batman and the Ben Affleck Batmans, because I honestly still don't know if it's set in the DCEU or not. Matt Reeves is directing it, and he is a great director. He made War for the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I believe. And those movies were incredible. So it seems like he's kind of got his finger on the pulse, but that was more like extraordinary situations that still felt realistic and grounded. So I think that's probably the tone he's going to carry over to this. And honestly, I just want to see more villains have a chance to shine, really. And it's rumored right now that the Penguin and Catwoman are both going to be featured. So it's kind of like Batman Returns all over again. So I hope they do different characterizations than things we've seen before. I hope that they bring back, I mean, just like a tinge of campiness into it, because that's what makes it so fun. Like even just like some bright colors or something, you know, just like something that's not all black and gray, which is Batman's two colors. So, I mean, really, I don't have a quick pitch, but I would love to see just like an Arkham Asylum type storyline brought to life. That would be awesome. Or like an Injustice storyline brought to life. Those are two of my favorite iterations that we have yet to see in live action. So those would be awesome. But as it goes for the Batman, I'm not really. I'm just kind of waiting to see what they do and hope that they bring us something that we haven't seen before, but still have remnants of what we have and what we love while making it their own.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I can't believe we've gone this entire time and haven't talked about Halle Berry yet, talking about Batman, but
oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking about Catwoman.
He mentioned it when he said Catwoman. I was like, Halle Berry in my mind.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to at least say it.
Thinking about that movie. Oh man, that movie got like totally wiped from my memory for this entire hour.
Well, I would say if I had a quick pitch, that it would be in the DCEU moving forward with this Batman, however they do it, I wouldn't mind them doing a bit of the Hawkeye and Ant-Man dance on Robin. Like put Robin in the universe with Batman for Batman's solo movies, but maybe when it comes time for like Justice League and whatnot, Robin's on house arrest or off doing something or taking care of somebody somewhere, so that there's sort of, he's excused from the events of the big teen movie. But when it's just a Batman movie, a solo movie, I would love to get more Robin. That's my quick pitch, is just find somebody that can do it well, and bring him back to the silver screen.
I couldn't agree more with you. I honestly like Robin more than I like Batman, because I think sidekicks are infinitely more interesting than their hero counterparts, because they're the people who just stand by and take basically none of the credit, but do almost just as much work, if not more. And I really like kind of some of the newer iterations of Robin we've got. And I love the entire like Bat family storylines. Like I love that there's Nightwing and Red Robin and Batwing and Batwoman and Batgirl and all of these different people that we just haven't had a chance to explore yet. So hopefully we get to see that now, especially with the Batwoman TV series. They're kind of starting to do that. But yeah, I've always loved Robin more. And then now, even especially with like the Titans TV show that we're getting on DC Universe, where Batman's kind of gone a little crazy. So Robin has to try and establish himself as a different person, but he's always walking around with that, hey, Robin, where's Batman? But like, he's not that person anymore. So that, I mean, the Robin's always been very interesting. So I couldn't agree more with you there. I want to see more of Robin, and then even kind of like through a bigger lens, just more of the Bat family in general, because we've only scratched the surface on what the Bat family contains.
Maybe that's the trick. Maybe that's what the DC universe needs. They need a Batverse that is just as deep in breadth, and they need a Aquaman verse that is just as deep, that goes through all the lore and has many, many movies all on its own. And then on the rare occasion, you bring them all together for the Justice League and that type of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, apparently they're already making one for Aquaman that's just going to be specifically a horror movie spinoff about that one quadrant of underwater people that have turned to monsters. Apparently they're just making just a horror movie based off that.
Really? With not really having to do with Aquaman at all, just set in that universe?
No, not at all. Yeah, no superheroes, no. It's literally just about those monsters, and I'm assuming probably like a cruise ship or something like that gets stuck in those waters, and then they get onto the cruise ship somehow and start attacking people. But it's just going to be a horror movie about those monsters. Like no Aquaman, no superheroes, none of that.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'll take it. And that's kind of where DC needs to go. Just more interesting stuff like that. Like I'm sure somebody went, oh, these monsters have a really cool design. They'd be really cool in like a scary movie. And just to have the one person be like, yeah, why don't we do that? You like give $5 million and just start doing that.
Yeah, I'm down. Just build them out. Build out, like I said, all of the heroes. Give them their own deep universe that has different moving pieces and stories and parts happening. And then instead of it being like super interwoven with, the beat that every 2 years you're going to have a movie where you bring them all together, like spread that beat to every 5 years,
Yeah, I'm down with that. Well, hopefully we get that in the new Batman with Robert Pattinson.
Yep. All right.
Well, I guess that about wraps us up here for this episode of the Scruffy Movies podcast. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. What do you think of Robert Pattinson Batman? Let us know below. Again, if you want to be entered to win a free digital copy of The Death of Superman, just comment the code word Smallville below or direct message me at Scruffy Movies on Instagram. Again, the code word is Smallville. Please follow us on Instagram at Scruffy Movies.
And Crockalicious.
We thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.